You're welcome to the sewing tutorial of our last video. After sewing, this is the outcome on the mannequin. Now imagine the client is wearing it. Look at the back. The back is giving. It is looking beautiful and all neat. So let's get started with the sewing. I cut both the lining and the actual fabric, and I went ahead to add all the necessary half inch for joining. Now for the actual piece, I gum it with stay, and the lining I gum it with paper gum. So let's start sewing. Now before we sew, I'm just going to show you what I did. Now this is for the paper gum. Now the actual piece, I cut out 4 center fronts, starting from the underbust to the chest line. Then the bustier part, I also cut out that shape, leaving half inch. I did not include the half inch so that when I sew it will not be too bulky. So you're going to place it like that and sew with half inch. I went ahead to do that for both the lining piece and the actual fabric, and I also ironed it. When I iron, I use my breast stamp to iron, and I just covered the seam with a piece of stay. I did that for the lining as well. You guys know how to do this. We've done this severally on this channel. Now we're going to be working on the lining, so I'm going to be putting boning on the lining because I'm lacing the back. I don't like it when I just lace like that, so I have to make it snatchy. So I cut out a regional boning. We are putting at the center front. We are going to, from the center front, I'm going to mark 1.5 inch that way, and I will also put on the upper part there. Now this is how I'm going to be placing it. I am not putting it on the underbust, so just watch what I do. So I'll place it that way, then I'll do that for the other parts. I'm also going to be putting it on that point. So from the underbust, I mark 2.5 inches, then I'll place it like that. So that is one, and the other side I'll sew, but before I sew, I'm going to put it on the back piece as well. Now for the back piece, I'll be sewing 2 regional boning on it, starting from the back dart. You have to notch your back darts on your fabric. So I'm going to sew that way. So when I sew, I'll come back and show you guys. After sewing, this is what I am talking about. This is how you're going to sew your regional boning on it. Okay. Now when you turn it, you actually have space for your cup, for your bust. Now for the back piece, this is how it is. We're going to take our strap here. You know we have total of 15 inches. I added 1 inch for sewing, so I cut 16 inches. Then I'm going to divide that piece into 2 because we need just 1 inch for our strap. So we have 2. This fabric actually looks like each other, so you just have to indicate the one that is the right side and the wrong side. Now you're going to fold it into 2 and you will sew, then you turn it out. You do that for the second strap. Guys, after sewing, this is how it is. Then I make sure I press the seam in between. I don't want the seam to show on any side. That is how you're going to sew your strap. Now we'll be attaching the strap to our bustier. So you take your front, you're going to sew it from the dart line. You're going to sew on the other, starting from the dart line. Then you use your lining to turn it with ½ inch. You take the back piece and you also place your strap on the back dart. you sew, you place the second strap on it, then you also turn it with your lining piece. After turning, you are going to use your stitch to secure both down. So let's do that, then I'll come back. So mates, I've sewn and I ironed the neckline. Now that is the neckline. I also top stitch it so we can have a smooth neck. I did that for the front and the back. Now for the back side, the parts where we are going to be putting our eyelets, I went ahead to use my machine to just secure both the lining and the actual piece together. Now let's work on the back. Now for this back, if you notice on the thumbnail, the back of the design has a black fabric as the boning casing. So I cut out a casing of 5 inches wide. Then just cut out any length. Make sure the length is longer than your back. Now you're going to fold it on both sides by ½ inch. After folding, then you iron it that way. So I'm going to iron, then I'll show you. So guys, I have gone ahead to iron it, and this is how it is. Now we're going to take one of the case, you place your back at the middle, because when you iron, you already have your middle line. You place it, making sure the right side face up. Then you take a regioning boning, and you are going to cut out the length, leaving ½ inch at that down part for joining to the down part of your skirt. You do that for the other side, and you place it that way. Now you sew it on both sides. You sew, you take another boning, you're going to place it just the way you see me doing, like that. Yeah, leaving 1 inch space. That is where your eyelets will stay. Then you're going to place it that way. You sew. So guys, I've gone ahead to sew it, and you're going to fold it into two, like the other way around. You fold it. After folding, so you sew that place very close to the upper part there, so that we can cut off what we don't need. You're going to also fold the other one, and you sew. Guys, I've folded it and I sew it, so I'm going to be cutting off the excess casing. So you cut very close to your seam. After cutting, you cut the other one, then you now turn it like that. After turning, you're not going to sew on that point. You sew like that, and you sew the other parts. I've gone ahead to sew, then I'm cutting off the extra casing. Now our back is almost ready. The next thing we'll do is to attach our back, our down part. So you all know how to cut a skirt. The focus for this tutorial is the upper part. So now let's join the skirt part. So guys, you take your back piece. I have 1 inch for my zip allowance, and I went ahead to notch that zip allowance. Now on the zip part, I went down by 1½ inches. I'm going to be connecting it to the waistline so that we can cut off that part. That is to avoid any folding or any bulge at the back. This is what I normally do if I am doing a lacing. I don't do that for zip. And I also put back my 1 inch sewing allowance so that I can know that that is the back. So I take my upper parts, then you place your actual fabric on the fabric. Now remember, we have 1 inch for our waistline for the spacing. So from the zip side, I mark the 1 inch. Now that is where you start sewing from. I hope you understand. So you place the 1 inch that way and you sew it with 0.25. You do that for the other back. From the zip, you mark your 1 inch. So whatever space, whatever space you have is what you put for the back. Then after sewing with 0.25, you are going to turn it to the other side. Then you place your lining on it so you can seal that part with your lining. So you're not going to use the lining, you sew with 0.5. You do that for the second part. You turn it and you place your lining on it and sew with 0.5. So I did that for the back and I also do that for the front. Then I went ahead to sew all the sides together and the down parts. So let's sew. Now for the front, like I said, it is still the same thing. Place it on it and you turn and sew with the lining. Now my lining is shorter than the actual fabric with 1.5 inch. After sewing, guys, this is what it is. I've ironed everything. I've turned the down parts. Then the sides, I weave it. I did this just because if there's any amendments, the client is not in my state, she can just do it easily. Now for the zip side, I turn it and I also sew because that zip side I did inner sewing for it. But the other side I just weave it. So I place the two back piece together and I mark 0.75. Now you know I left 1 inch for zip allowance, but because I sew inside with 0.25, what I have left is 0.75. Then I'll be fixing my zip. From the waist there, I went down by 8.5 inches. Then for the slits at the back, I think I did a total of 23 inches. It depends on how long you want your slit to be. Yeah. So you sew to that point, then you iron and you use your hemming gum to secure the slit. So after sewing the zip, this is how it is looking all neat and pretty. Now that is the slit as well. This is how it is from the inside. Now guys, we're going to be joining the sides together. So you place the right side on each point and you sew with your seam allowance, the seam allowance you added when you were drafting. Now I finished sewing the seam and I ironed it. So this is it, and I also put the eyelets and I went ahead to sew the rope for the lacing, then the modesty panel also. After that, we are going to be cutting the structured sleeve. Now the structured sleeve is a very simple one. Just cut your bridal satin, and I have a length of, we can do a length of 40 and the width can be up to 30, depend on how full you want it to be. Then I gum it first with stay, then I gum it with this medium gum stay. So when you gum, you are going to fold it into two and sew inside, then you can bring it out. I've done this one, I already gum it, I just want to show you guys. So after folding to turn outside, you're just going to take the edge and you pleat. You just pleat and sew. It will be giving you something like this. Then you take your fabric close to the side seam. You're going to sew, leaving some space for ease. Then after sewing it, just doing some gathering at the tip. This is how it is looking like. I weave the edge, then you go ahead and sew it on your fabric and we are done.